Just to cut to the chase, this is what business owners are actually considering when hiring a appointment setter or a closer. So my name is Sean McGrath. I'm the owner of SalesAccelerator.io. It's a platform that helps setters and closers get really good, relevant jobs that not only pay well but are easier to do than most of the industry. Basically, through this breakdown, I'm going to explain what business owners are looking for. Being a guy who has helped grow a company from 1 million and 2 million in the coaching and development space, I know exactly what these business owners are not only looking for, but what I was looking for when hiring a sales team. So we're going to start with the first topic. I'm going to go through 10 topics. One of them is going to be experience and track record. So this one's a pretty obvious one. If you have relevant experience selling online or doing so, you'll definitely stand out a lot more than someone who just went to closer school and doesn't have experience. A big thing that I always kind of explain about closer schools and the importance of why that's not enough is, say you wanted to be a bartender. This is the easiest way I could really put it. Say you wanted to be a bartender, and you had to compete against a person who's bartended for a couple years, but then you went to the bar and said, "No, I went to bartending school, so I know all the things about bartending." They're most likely going to hire the person who has bartended for 2 years because as educated as you could be about sales, what generally translate the best is somebody who's actually sold on the phone or sold in person or done door to door or has sold cars or whatever it may be. I've done a mixture of everything. So I understand exactly in this industry, a big thing is not only experience selling on the phone, but specifically if you sold coaching of any type, say it was for a fitness guru or say it was for somebody in the personal development space or maybe even the business consulting space, it's very, very relevant for the space. And if you don't, then it definitely makes it a little bit more difficult, but not impossible. Obviously, with closer experience and a hunger to want to learn this space, I would say is probably way more important than actual experience. Because especially when it comes down to setting jobs or getting a job as a setter, a lot of the people who are doing setting are new to sales anyway, so it's not the biggest deal. Now, if you're going for closer roles, it definitely might be a little bit more of a barrier. I'd recommend either starting at a company that is successful, that is in setting, or maybe even becoming a sales development representative for a tech company, which is basically corporate terms for someone who is like a setter in this space. So another really important thing, and this actually helps in the interview process too, is communication skills. So a lot of people when it comes down to setting schools or they've gone to them, they think that they like, oh, I've seen all the tactics, I know what to do, I know how to get on the phone. But then when they get on the phone, they're very choppy. They didn't memorize their script. They didn't really know what they're doing, and they choke up and they sound really bad. And even if you're following the script correctly, if you're just like you don't know the script well enough, which goes into the other part of active listening, then you're focused so heavily on saying the script correctly that you don't actually listen to the call because you're so nervous. This is why I think when it comes to communication skills, a really big thing in this industry, and it will actually show that you're more experted than most people, is really talk about the importance of knowing scripts, like studying scripts. And here's the truth about scripts. Yes, you are not going to say them word for word, especially when you've done it 1,000 times and you studied it hardcore. But the reason why you study the script is so you know the framework of what you're selling. Because if you know your framework, and say you're on the phone with somebody who says a total curveball thing and kind of gets you off the track of your script, you've memorized the script so much that no matter where they curveball you or derail you in the conversation, you'll know exactly how to get back onto the script structure. The importance of script is not so you sound like a robot and say the exact same thing 1,000 times or the same thing 1,000 times. It's so you can understand the framework of where this conversation is going, and it's a lot easier to control the conversation when you have that studied. And it makes you a lot more natural. It makes you a lot more understanding on the phone, and you really will be able to really listen good on the calls if you know the entire structure of how the call is going to go and you don't worry about that. So you could literally focus on what they're saying. So, and that kind of goes on to the other factor of knowledge of the product or service. My recommendation is that if you're in an interview process and you don't really know what the product is, really hone down on the factor of telling the business owner, like, hey, I am going to learn everything possible about this. I'm going to study the script multiple times a day, every day until I get it perfect. I'm going to study the back end products. I'm going to understand what our competitors do. Now, this all sounds like overwhelming because it's a lot of information, but the reality is, if you've sold for a company long enough, these calls become very repetitive to the point where you start learning all the other intricate parts of the business. Meaning, say you once you get the script down and once you get the conversations stuff down, the only thing else to really start to learn is the other parts of the industry. Say you're selling fitness, you know, why is this fitness company better than Brandon Carter's company, or why is it better than Alex Hormozy's company or Jim Launch? And really kind of be able to break down those objections and understand what you're going to see, because a lot of these calls are repetitive, especially in sales. People think that it's going to be a different call every time. To an extent it is, but the reality is a lot of these calls are going to be the same. A lot of these calls won't derail you as much, especially if you know your knowledge and you know how to answer questions really quickly. And the way that you do that is just time and experience. So knowledge of the product is very, very important to know. Really sell the fact that you are going to do a deep dive, deeper than most of the people that work at the company. It will really help the business owner that's interviewing you understand that you got a guy who's hungry and wants to learn this product and actually wants to work for you. Sales skills and techniques. Now, this is not as important, because kind of going back to these like top three. So if you have experience, if you have communication skills, which is what you do if you study everything, and you have knowledge of the product, this really comes down to what is sales skill. Now, of course, when you go to sales school, or even when you go into my program, which we teach sales skill a little bit to an extent. I teach more of the mindset factors because I think that's more important. But even with mindset factors, it goes really hand in hand with sales skill and understanding what you're actually selling. And the techniques behind it, say you do Closer Survival Guide, Grant Cardone, or Sell or Be Sold, reading books about selling and persuasion. The more knowledge you have about sales techniques and understanding sales processes, it just makes this job a lot easier. And you'll be able to kind of have a healthier understanding and less fear on the phone when you understand what is actually going on the calls, and having backups like sales skills and techniques definitely really help. This is actually a really big factor of sales schools or closer schools. They do help with this factor. They do teach you these things. However, in my pure opinion, is if you have these three things down pat, which is experience, communication skills, which is through active listening and clarity and persuasion, as well as just knowledge of your product, it's really, really hard to beat a salesperson who has all those things versus a salesperson who just BS's and has kind of like sales tactics and stuff like that. Sales tactics are only nice when you're, in my opinion, an expert and you can kind of just use them for fun. But I don't think they're as relevant. But definitely important to know, and definitely a thing that business owners want to see for sure. This is actually a really huge one too, though. This one doesn't actually have to do so much as getting hired. This actually goes into the factor of finding the right opportunity for you. See, in this industry, they make it seem like any type of job that you're going to get in sales is perfect. Just get that job. Now, if you have zero experience, I agree with that. If you have zero experience in sales, you should take any job that takes you, because A, you're going to get paid to learn. And no matter what the product is, you're going to learn if you're completely brand new. But say you're a couple years down the line, you've sold for other companies, you've sold different types of products like cars, or maybe you've done door to door, you've done real estate, you have a base level of understanding of sales. This is a really important one to know and talk about when you're in the interview process. Not only do you seem very mature when you talk about culture, in a company, because this is what in corporations, this is actually a really big conversation where like you could be an expert salesperson that's kind of like a soft closer, understands like the customer service approach. I'm more of a customer service based salesperson where it's like I just want to get down to the brass tacks of how I can help you, versus like a hard closer, which is kind of like a Grant Cardone-ish style, or even like a Wolf of Wall Street type, Jordan Belfort style, where it's very direct, it's super quick, and you don't really give them a chance to think and you just sell them. Both styles work, and there's a lot of companies that fit both of those styles. So a big thing to make sure that when you're in the interview process, even if the company is really good, you really want to talk to them about culture fit, and really talk to them about like, is this something that really makes sense for me? Like, am I going to have to hard close? Maybe you are the person who doesn't like the soft approach and the customer service approach, and you just want to hammer the phone, and you really want to get some calls done, you really want to make some sales, and you want to be around an environment that all feels that way. You will sell so much more if you're in an environment where people are like, yeah, we're all going to get these sales done. Fuck everyone else. Let's get it going. That's awesome. And it's actually a really great environment too, especially if you're new to be in, because it really motivates you to want to kind of get to that next level. But if you're going to do more of like a customer service approach, say you're more of like my style where it's, We worked in with finance. When I worked for Mercedes-Benz, we weren't doing hard closing. Like, yeah, there was negotiation, and yeah, there was heated negotiation at times, but that's just selling. We were very soft. We were very smooth because we knew we were dealing with millions and millions and millions of dollars. When you're dealing at the levels of banking and like really really high ticket products, depending on what you're selling, sometimes the really smooth and respectable and not hardcore closing is really what a lot of these rich people want to see from you. Generally, when you're working with a lot of money, they rich people don't have the time to get yelled at and like have sales shoved down their throats because they're a little bit smarter. They know that those tactics don't work, or maybe they've used those tactics to get rich, so they know everything in the book. So really, what they want is more of just like a customer experience. They want to be told exactly all the intricate factors, and they really just want to see what's working for them and what doesn't. This is really, really important. So culture fit is a really important one. Make sure that whatever company you work for, it makes sense for you. Because if not, you're just going to jump into a company that you don't like. It's going to be hard to sell because you can't really do it the way that you want to do it. And you're not going to make any money because if you don't fit the culture of of how everything is going, then you won't fit the sales structure, you won't fit the script structure. You're going to feel awkward and clunky, and you're just not going to have a good time. So it's very important to know that. And then, of course, there's work ethic, which, in my opinion, that doesn't matter what type of sales company you work for, whether it's a soft closing company like customer service based or even like the hardcore like Grant Cardone style. You definitely want to have work ethic. At the end of the day, like it really just comes down to work ethic, especially as a setter. You don't have to really be good at sales to be a setter. What you need to be good at is having work ethic and picking up the phone and dialing, doing 150 to 200 calls a day, and getting comfortable with the idea that you have to do that, and hopefully having the company structure to be able to do that. Because sometimes companies don't have it structured, whether it's in their CRM and it's all like clunky. Which CRM, for you who don't know, is what we use to make calls online. It's a system where we can take notes. I'll go a little bit more into that deeper down this presentation, but it's just really important to know what you're doing when it comes to work ethic, which is just always working harder. And I'd recommend, even if you're a closer, to be able to pick up the phone and start dialing too. There's going to be some free time for you as a closer. Now, if your entire schedule is booked for the day, great. Then everyone's making money, everyone's happy. But if you're not, you should really be picking up the slack for the setters and not relying on them to do all your work. It's super super important. And having the motivation and drive, for finding out your why, finding out why you're doing this, because sometimes sales can get mundane. But if you have a goal and a purpose for why you're doing all these sales, it really makes it very easy to get these jobs done. So going back into what CRM is, which is customer relationship management tools. So these are stuff like, you've probably even heard these terms like Salesforce, HubSpot, Monday.com, Zoho CRM, a whole bunch of other ones. Personally, my favorite was HubSpot. If you're a business owner watching this and you want to really organize for your sales team, I do not recommend anything other than HubSpot. I think it was very simple to use. I think it was very non-clunky. It was not buggy. Soho I believe it's one of the cheaper ones. I did not like using it when I worked in tech. It just was clunky. I didn't like it. And Salesforce, the big dog that everyone loves, woo! Salesforce sucks in my opinion. It's just too complicating. Like, yeah, I get it. Salesforce has every little factor where you can record every little bit of data. Listen, if you're selling like high-end banking or wealth management and you need to know every little tiny detail, sure, Salesforce might be good. I think for a majority of salespeople, though, especially for salespeople, you want a product that's super simple to use, organizable, and you could quickly kind of put in notes, and it's again just simple. I think Salesforce is without a doubt the most technologically advanced one. You get a lot of stuff into it. Sorry, I'm going on a little CRM rant, but it's kind of important. But I think if you're a business owner watching this, HubSpot is the best one. It's a little pricey, but in my opinion, especially if you're doing high ticket and your business is doing anywhere in the million to 2 million area, I recommend doing HubSpot. Not only that, they have a lot of good training videos in like their platform, and I just think it's really good. Plus, they have, I believe, a free platform that you could try out, but you'll see. I think it's a really good platform. So my little nerd rant on CRM systems, on why I think they're good. But moving on from that, it's good to be technology proficient. It's good to know these tools. Honestly, if you're in an interview process, like, and you've used any type of CRM, like, bring that up. Like, hey, I've used a couple CRMs. I understand how to use a CRM. I've done calling systems before. This is a really big thing because, especially when it comes down to setting and closing companies, this is a really big learning curve for a lot of people who haven't sold before. How to use a CRM, how to put in notes, how to do all this. It seems simple. It seems like something that you wouldn't have to think too much on, but there's definitely a lot of people, especially now with tech getting so advanced, they don't really know how to use CRMs. So if you know how to use a CRM correctly, it definitely saves a business owner time for hiring you, or like the training process of that, I should say. So it's definitely very good to look into. Consistency. I've seen a lot of people say like, yeah, I'm going to be a hammer, and then the first week they're doing 150 calls a day, and it's like, great, they're doing awesome, and then week two they're doing like 125, excuse me, and they're getting a couple appointments on the board, sure, whatever, but then the next week they're doing 100, and then the week after that they're doing 75 calls a day, and then the week after that they're doing like 40, but they're just not consistent in the amount of calls that they're doing. They're getting burnt out. They're not doing something right. But if you're consistently always putting in numbers, even if it's like the bare minimum numbers saying it's like 150, if you're doing that every day, which is really hard to do, by the way, I'm not downplaying the difficulty of that, but if you could do that, oh my gosh, you will stand out. Like, not only that, you might actually be put in a position where you're going to be training the setters or the closers in the future, because it's like, wow, you actually know what you're doing. It's really, really important to have these factors and to really just be consistent. Being consistent is really hard. It's definitely not easy, but the more consistent you are, the more dependable you are. Apologize. It definitely just helps in the process. So if you have a track record of consistency to show, how you could show that, maybe you could show your old CRM logs or whatever. This is definitely a very helpful thing for business owners, and I would say, especially if you're going into being a setter, this is probably the main one that they want. They want people who can consistently dial without there really being a problem. Problem solving is a really good skill to really show. If you could show problem solving skills like, hey, I see that we're doing this with the CRM, like I see that we're putting notes in this way, but at my last company, I learned with the CRM, there's a way to organize it and make it easier for us to make calls quicker. Can we do that? You know, even if the business owner doesn't like want you to do that, or so on and so forth, and say like, hey, we're not going to do that, in their mind, like the fact that you could see stuff even in the interview process or see how they do, because you'll probably see the back end of like how they do everything, or maybe you go through a trial period. Some of these companies have trial periods. This is more of like a trial period thing. If you're in a trial period where it shows like you're making calls and like, can you actually do well on the phone, even if you don't do the best on the phone, if you could show them like, hey, that you're going to help them build their company a little bit, maybe it's also a factor where they'll transition you from not only a sales role but maybe even a sales engineer role, where you could which sales engineers aren't really they're more or less people who will get on the phone and help close the deals with just the knowledge that they know, but kind of helping the back end side of like how a sales process goes. This could be really useful for business owners, and they might even just hire you, not even because you're the best salesperson, but the fact that you might not be able to help them down the line growing their company. Any way you could show a business owner that you're willing to help them grow their company, that's an attractive trait, and that's pretty obviously an attractive trait. Um, Definitely was attractive when I was like helping people get into the company that I used to work for in the coaching consulting space. I always liked bringing on people that were more than just salespeople. If they were problem solvers, people that didn't have to micromanage too much. I didn't really like to micromanage at all. So when you get someone who's a problem solver and could kind of solve their own problems without having to ask 80,000 times, or they could fix little solutions in your process, it's always a good thing. It's always, always, always a good thing. Being results oriented too. This kind of goes back into the consistency factor. If you're consistent, you pretty much show that you're result oriented. There's two types of kind of successes. Results oriented could be more of like a people oriented factor or results oriented factor. Now, if you're a manager, these two things can work. Definitely as a salesperson, you want to be more on the side of results oriented. You want to be able to kind of show the results side. But if you're a manager, you're managing a sales team, being people oriented and being like the world's best helper in the company might be more of a better route, because the results oriented factor for a manager, in my opinion, is being people oriented and being the team player and being the person that everyone wants to go to, because the more that your team trusts you to come to you with problems, the more you could fix problems quicker than later. Because if you're a boss that people fear, then problems won't get solved quickly. And if problems don't get solved quickly, that means it could, in any sort of way, it could damage the company. So the more that everything is damaged, the less results that will happen. But the more that everyone trusts you and wants to work with you, the more results are going to happen from the results oriented factor anyway. So that's very, very much important. And then affordability. When it comes down to it, especially if you're brand new, you want to be able to kind of, I wouldn't even say undersell yourself, because sometimes that could be bad because you can get taken advantage by the wrong program. But say you're into a program that you know, or you've read reviews and it's a really good program that, like, in the future, if you just work your way up, you're going to make a ton of money. And what by future I mean, like, in a couple months time, you can kind of build a you could build up like your career in within the company. Then sometimes it's good to kind of undersell yourself and be like, hey, listen, I'll work for a very, very small amount in the beginning just to show you that I actually am hungry to learn. And then once you see that I'm actually really good, then you can kind of put me to like either regular salary or regular payment factor or a good type of percentage when it comes to closing deals. Um, so affordability and kind of showing the fact that, like, hey, like, he's actually going to be pretty cost effective to hire him. This is a big factor, especially for business owners. They're cheap. They just are. It is what it is. You're never going to beat that factor. They want the bottom dollar. They want to make the most amount of money possible for the littlest amount of pay. But if you show that you could actually bring in a lot of value from the beginning, then they don't mind paying you a lot, especially if you're going to bring in tons more value than you're actually selling. So it's really good to know these things. And I would say that these are probably like the top 10 things that are really important to know while being in an interview process, or what you need to be when it comes down to closing and setting space, like what you need to know. And unfortunately, in this space, a lot of people really hypercharge, and they always like want to make it seem like, oh, it's really easy. Just buy my, like, become a setter in my closing program. Just spend $3 grand and spend a lot of money to basically just learn how to sell, which is something you could do through YouTube, which is what you're doing right now on this video. I think the biggest factor in this industry that makes you money is actually finding the right opportunities, because you could be the best salesperson at a company that's making 500 grand a year, but if you're the best salesperson at a company making 500 grand a year, and you only get 10% of the company, which is kind of industry standard for closer, so you bring up 500 grand in revenue, you're only getting 50 grand, which is not a lot. And a lot of that is 1099, which you're going to have to write off in taxes. So it's really just like 40 grand. But if you get into an opportunity that's making 4 million a month, and even though, yeah, there's a lot of setters and closers, the company's making 4 million a month and they have a really big ad spend, and there's a lot of leads where you can call and actually sell. Even if you kind of suck, generally you'll make a lot more money just from the law of odds that the product is really good and there's a lot of money kind of going through there. And that's a really big reason why SalesAccelerator.io existed. I really wanted to create a community that was not only very affordable for people who are just starting out in the space, because it's really expensive to try to find how to get the right opportunities, or you have to pay for the right opportunities through closer schools, which I'm not knocking them, because sometimes they could put you in really good situations, which are good, and that's what recruiters cost anyway in the real world. So I mean, so be it. That's really just the price that it costs. But I really think that it comes down to, when it comes to getting a good opportunity, it's just being able to network with business owners and understand the needs and how to reach out to them correctly. Not just through Indeed and a good resume, but actually reaching out to them through LinkedIn strategy, or reaching out to them, and knowing what they actually want to see when it comes down to a setter and closer. A lot of people say it's just like they want to just see a high-strung salesperson, wow, like, but the reality is some of them don't. Some of them want more of like a customer service-based salesperson, especially with these higher-paid companies. When it comes to luxury, a lot of them want that college-educated, soft, white glove approach. The velvet hammer is what my old mentor Reg Patterson used to call it, where he's like, they want the ability for you to be able to close, but with a velvet hammer to the point where it doesn't almost feel like you're closing them. Like, if that makes sense. They don't want their clients to feel like they got sold. They want their clients to feel like they made the right purchase, which in a lot of high-paying programs, that's kind of the approach that they want. So to sell the fact that like they want you to be high strung and be like blah, blah, blah on the phone, it might not actually be the right approach. So knowing the backgrounds of how to do that, I teach that all into my program. If you want to take a look, the link is going to be in the description. Either way, whether you take a look at my program or not, I hope you got a lot of value from this video. I hope you actually take action of what I showed you in this video. And if you want to learn a deeper knowledge of how to actually get real work in this industry that not only pays but is easier to do than other setting and closing jobs, please not only give me a subscribe or a like, but please take a look into my program. I guarantee you it'd be the best $49 a month you will ever spend. Thank you again for watching this video. Hope you got a lot of value, and I'll see you in the next one.